So hello and welcome to the Sainsbury Wellcome Centre, to the first of our SWC lectures. Through the vision of the funders, we here at the Institute are interested in understanding the biological basis of behavior. What this means is understanding how activity in different parts of the brain, different brain cells, give rise to our perceptions, our thoughts, and our actions. And we wanted to broaden the scope of our research and inspire us to do our research and also engage the public by starting this series of lectures that will talk about different aspects of behavior in humans and animals given by academics and non-academics alike, to tell us a little bit more about why animals behave the way they do, what motivates them, and why they make why and how they make the decisions given their internal motivations and external influences. So our first lecturer is Sir David Attenborough. Now, Sir David probably doesn't need an introduction, but I will give one anyway. And perhaps as a reminder to some of you who have not experienced the life in television like Sir David has. So as a child, he was fascinated by fossils and collection of various specimens. And this passion for the world around him got him a scholarship at Cambridge, where he studied natural sciences, geology and zoology, whereupon he did a stint in the Navy, and then briefly the editor of children's books in London. But then he became disillusioned by this, and he said, this is not for me. And then he applied for a job at the BBC, initially to join the radio team. But then he said, why don't you instead become a trainee for television? Television, especially for those younger people in the audience, was in its inception then, and most families did not have a TV yet, right? And so, so David started making programs. One of the early successes was ZooQuest, where it was a partnership between London Zoo, and they brought in animals to the studio, where they discussed over the animals, petted them, and so on. Subsequently, David was made the controller of BBC Two. BBC Two was, again, in its inception, and he made it what it actually is today, introducing arts and music, and also sporting events on television, particularly snooker, which was a challenge given that it was a black and white television. It was not quite clear. Subsequent to that, given these successes, he then became the director of programs for the BBC. And perhaps due to the administrative workload, he resigned from this position to focus on his real passion, which is documentary filmmaking and engaging with the natural world. And that led to a series of spectacular, inspiring documentaries that I think inspired many of us. He took us from the cactus forests of Madagascar, where lemurs jump, through the caves of New Zealand to the savannas of Africa, and brought the real world, the natural world, into our living rooms. I had the pleasure, I just flew in from Switzerland this morning. I was sitting next to a gentleman, and I told him that I will meet Sir David today, and I asked him, and he says, I love his documentaries. And I asked him, what is it that makes them special to you? And he said, they captivate me, they transport me to a different world. After a hard day at work, I can watch this, and I can be put in a different place. And I think that is one of the main successes and inspirations. And in addition to that, for me as a scientist, perhaps on a personal note, and I know I also don't speak just for myself, but also several of you here who are scientists, Troy included, is that you're one of the reasons why I'm standing here today, because as a child, I watched the documentaries, in particular Life on Earth and the Trials of Life, and they made me want to study animal behavior because of those documentaries. And after that, I decided that actually to understand behavior, we really need to study the brain, because the brain generates all behavior. So that's why I started to do neuroscience. So without much further ado, well, here we have an audience of students from schools and members of the local community, so it's meant to be a public lecture. In addition, we have students, postdocs, and professors from UCL, as well as the representatives of our funders, from the Gatsby Charitable Foundation and the Wellcome Trust, and I would like to again thank them for giving us this opportunity to do the research that we do here. And there will be time for questions afterwards, so you'll be David will be happy to take questions after his lecture that is entitled "The Beauty and the Beasts," and it will be mostly about birds. And as you may know, birds are Sir David's great passion, and in particular perhaps birds of paradise. So without much further ado, I would like to thank you again for coming. Please welcome Sir David Attenborough.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. It is indeed a great honour to be giving this inaugural lecture in this very remarkable building. I've just been seeing it and wondering it, you living and working it, and maybe I hope you will agree with me that it is innovative, exciting, and above all, beautiful. I wouldn't hesitate to use the word beautiful. But the word beauty is a very difficult concept, in fact. If you were to try to describe beauty, I think most of us would start not with a human construct, but with ideas of the natural world. Beautiful landscapes, beautiful birds, beautiful insects, even though we can't define what they are. That sense of beauty and that passion which it instills in many a naturalist has infected naturalists throughout history. And in the 19th century, for example, a naturalist I greatly admire called Henry Russell Wallace was a passionate collector of beetles. Everybody seems to start off with beetles, but beetles and birds and reptiles and amphibians. And all he wanted to do in life was to go to the island of New Guinea to see fabled birds of paradise, which then were little known in Europe, and which were known, however, to dance. No European saw a bird of paradise, of which there are 40 different species, I should explain. No had seen a single species of bird of paradise displaying and dancing until Henry Russell Wallace did. And so he described in his book, Travels in the Eastern Archipelago, the excitement of seeing such wonders. And he became, he has a very famous description in which he explains how he had been seeking a particular species of butterfly, which was so beautiful when he saw it, he actually became dizzy, he felt ill, and he had a headache, and he had to go and lie down. It was so wonderful. That sort of reaction, of course, was combined with the fact that he had been looking for it for a very long time, so it was a fulfillment of an ambition, but that beauty.